All right, we're going to call the meeting to order at 6:31. If everyone would rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one indivisible. All right. Everybody has their mics on. And we have just one person on Zoom, and you can hear? Okay. Andy, will you take us through the roll call, please?
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me? There we go. All right. Dan Justice. Here. Earl Bullander. Here. Amanda Jeschke.
Here.
Cheyenne Hoffa. Nathan Sturdevant. Here. Rick Jacobs, sorry. That it? Just wait a second. Diane's not on here, right?
She's on.
No, yeah, wrong. That's Plan Commission. Okay, thanks. Then first order of business is the board to select a chairperson and vice chairperson for 2023. Let's see, do I have a nominate? We'll do this one at a time. Do I have anyone here from the board that would like to make a nomination for chairperson?
I nominate Amanda.
I second it.
Okay, well, is there any other nominations? Because I'll accept the nomination. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. All right, let's do the same thing for vice chairperson. Do I have a nomination?
Make a nomination, Earl. I'll second that.
Will you accept the nomination?
Oh, sure.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right, got the business out of the way. Let's go to approving the meeting minutes of the November meeting. Has the board had an opportunity to look over these? Is there any questions or corrections? All right, I'm looking for a motion for approval.
Make a motion to approve the November 23, 2022 meeting minutes.
Have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Abstain.
Any abstain? Minutes pass. All right.
Did you guys want to sign those right now and hand them over to Andy? So
Can do that.
got them done.
Well, yes. Got that one. Okay. Okay, moving on to new business. We have one case before us tonight. First of all, Adam, is there any additions to the agenda?
No, ma'am.
Okay, so the first case up is a variance 01-2023 located at 1837 West 900 North. Adam, can you give us the presentation, please?
Sure will. All right. So before you tonight is a request for a project at 1837 West 900 North. The owner of the property is Eddie Alexander, and him and his wife Jody are in the audience here tonight. The zoning on the property is residential 3.5. However, the current use of that property is really single family estate or rural residential. So the Alexanders would like to construct a new detached garage / metal pole barn on the property. And in order to do so as desired, they need to obtain two items. First would be a use variance, and that would be to allow a metal pole barn on a property that's zoned residential 3.5. And then secondly, they need a development standards variance, which would allow a 3-car garage without a 2-foot recess on the 3rd car bay. So if we take a look at the parcel map, all the areas in brown are the town limits. You can see where the star is located. That is where property is. And if we take a look at the aerial map, you can see the property is a very well-maintained property, very large. It's about 8.49 acres. And specifically where you see that star again is where they would like to place this garage. As we keep moving along, this is an oblique aerial photo. We're looking south. Again, you can see where the star is, and that's where the pole barn or garage would be located. And then just for reference, here is the home. It's a very well-maintained, beautiful home. So if we take a look at the site plan that they submitted, you can see that the building is 30 by 40, and it would be located off of that driveway that they have today. And then here is generally what the building would look like. So the first one in dealing with the use variance, again, to allow a metal pole barn on property that's zoned residential 3.5. As you can see here from the table in the zoning ordinance, this was an amendment that was recently adopted by town council on January 3rd. And the areas that are circled in red, you can see that under permitted accessory structures, it says pole barns and metal buildings, and those are not allowed in the residential 3.5 zoning district, which is a higher intensity zoning district, really more geared towards suburban or even urban type of development patterns. Just for reference, anything that you see that's highlighted in yellow were some of the changes that council authorized back on January 3rd. So in terms of any remonstrance from the public for this variance or the next one, all the public hearing notice items have been completed, and that included a posting of a sign, newspaper publication, and a mailing, and we're not aware of any remonstrance. So for variance number one, as we do with all of our variances, there's 3 different criteria under Indiana code that needs to be considered. The first one is general welfare, that if you were to approve it, that the approval wouldn't be injurious to the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So my recommendation here is in yellow, is that yes, I believe that's been met. Allowing a metal pole barn on this particular property would not impact those items. Note, the property functions as a rural residential property in which a metal pole barn is allowed. It is zoned properly. However, the zoning happens to be residential 3.5. So the applicant could seek a rezone, but frankly, the use variance is quicker and cheaper. Secondly, the adjacent property test, that the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. I'd say yes, that's been met. There's no reason to believe that a metal pole barn on this rural property would diminish adjacent property values. And the last item is practical difficulty, that the strict application of the terms of this chapter of the zoning ordinance would result in a practical difficulty in the use of the property. And I'd say, yes, that's been met. As I mentioned, the zoning is a mismatch with the use of the property, which does pose a practical difficulty in this case. So my recommendation would be to approve this, this first variance. All right, on to the second one. This would be to allow a 3-car garage without a 2-foot recess on the 3rd car bay. And this stems from an amendment that was approved by council on January 3rd that says that all accessory structures over 200 square feet shall follow the architectural standards per the zoning district. And so that's what you see in red. By the way, it also goes on to say that pole barns and metal buildings shall only be allowed in the following zoning districts. Agriculture, rural residential, et cetera, does not include R3.5. So basically, when we see this provision in the code, then we look at the architectural standards for that particular zoning district. So as we move on, there are residential design standards, and it says for garages, if you're doing a 3-car garage, that the third bay shall have a separate door and shall be recessed 2 feet from the other bays. It does have a separate door, but it's not recessed. So again, back to the 3 different items to consider under general welfare. The first one, I think, yes, that's been met. A lack of a 2-foot plane recess in this particular case would not impact those items. Secondly, in terms of adjacent property and adjacent property values, I think, yes, that's been met. That frankly, lack of a 2-foot plane recess would not negatively impact any adjacent properties. And then the last one, in terms of practical difficulty, I'd say practical difficulty, that the strict application of terms of the zoning ordinance would result in a practical difficulty. I'd say, yes, that's been met. This provision in the zoning ordinance is really intended to apply to front-loaded attached 3-car garages, really to enhance aesthetics and to reduce garage dominance on a home. However, the text does not distinguish between attached or detached. The other point that I'd argue is that additionally, a 2-foot recess is typically not seen on a metal pole barn. So as with the last one, my recommendation would be to approve this second variance as well. So with that, if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to address those. And as I mentioned, the property owners are here as well. Thank you.
Thanks. Does any of the board have any questions for Adam this time?
On the second variance, excuse me, you talk about for R3.5 that there are architectural standards. We talked about how it's a mismatch. Is there anything for rural residential that talks about that's different governing the architectural standards for 3-car garage? Or is it
No.
silent on the issue?
It's silent on the issue.
So it would be a non-issue if this was zoned rural residential.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so technically, if we get this through, if the property was zoned rural residential, you could still do a pole barn without issue. But I guess technically you would have to have a 2-foot recess.
It would still,
That would still,
same application would be applied for.
right, if you're doing a 3-car
3-car.
garage. But if
Okay.
you're just, let's say you're doing a 2-car garage pole barn in rural residential, no special authorization from BZA is needed.
Okay.
All right. Is there anyone else? Okay, we have time for the petitioner to come up. If you want to add anything to the presentation. Okay. Okay, that would be, we have nothing to add on that. Thank you. We also have time now for public response for or against comments or questions in the public. I'm going to see that there's none. Time for government officials to weigh in. Any questions from you all? Okay. Let's see, well, we don't need the petitioner to come back up to answer any questions because there was none. So at this time, I think, like I said, this is pretty clear, cut and dried unless the board has any other additional questions.
Nope.
Okay, well, I guess let's do this one variance at a time. So let's look at 1.1 first, and this is to allow the metal pole barn in the R3.5 zoning. Do I have a board member that would like to make a motion to approve with conditions or deny?
I'll move to approve that variance, allow the pole barn in R3.5 zoning.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? All right, first one passes. Looking at the second variance, this is to allow a 3-car garage with no 2-foot offset. Looking for a board member to make a motion to approve with conditions or deny.
I'll move to approve the allow the 3-car garage with no 2-foot offset.
Okay, all in favor?
I'll second that.
Second.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, well, do I have a second? Okay, all right, we have a second. And now, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Well, that was pretty easy. Let's go back to our agenda. I guess we just need our board members here to fill out their paperwork real quick and pass it down to Andy. Like that. All right, well, if there's nothing else, I want to thank everybody for coming to the meeting, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right, second,
Second that.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thanks, Alex.
Have a good night.